In this episode, I'm joined once again by my soul sister, Mariko Bangerter, someone whose presence always brings depth and clarity to conversation. Today, we explore something we don't nearly hear enough about, the Oversoul. Not just the higher self, but what happens when the soul's full remembering begins to land through the body, through the heart. We talk about shadow, grief, identity, and what it really means to live as the new human. This isn't teaching, it's a reflection. Let's begin. Hello, beautiful Mariko. I am so excited for you to come back to Love of One podcast and have a beautiful conversation with me today.
Thank you, Angela, for having me. I'm super excited.
Today's topic, I think we discussed offline as we always do before we get on here, that we're going to talk about how people are moving through this ascension and maybe descension in a sense of, we'll talk about that, of the oversouls or the higher self connections and living in this higher vibration and higher frequency of ourselves and coming into our own sovereignty and how that looks on a daily life here in a human form and the struggles that I don't hear much about, like other people sharing, or maybe as we discussed before we got on here, maybe it's just the same information being repeated and no one's coming up with anything new. But there is more to discuss and there is more that's coming up, especially now as the earth is shifting and the energies are changing collectively
Yeah.
and individually.
Yeah. And I think, as you said, there's so many changes happening now. Changes, climate changes, old systems are collapsing, whether that's, I mean, we can just see in the US, right? It's just not knowing what is
Mhm.
happening. And then, whatever happens in the US ripples out in the rest of the world. And we really are living in a period of chaos in many ways. And the earthquakes, the volcanoes, on an earth level, there's so many changes happening. And we're wired to feel that change is scary. It is
Mhm.
scary for the nervous system. It is scary for our psychology. And it's difficult to it's difficult to get a handle on times of intense change. Yeah, I think it's important to sort of talk about this and how this could show up.
But you recently came back from a retreat and just feeling into those high vibrations and then being in that state and then coming back to integrate probably took a little while, you said. But when you do want to talk a little bit about that as we kind of navigate into living now on a daily
Yeah,
basis within this
it's funny.
vibration.
I was on this training course with my wonderful teachers, Andy Tomlinson and Rena Kusama, and it's really it's an energy training course. So we learn how to use and entrain ourselves with the higher vibrations that are here on earth now and are increasing. And
Mhm.
so interestingly enough,
Mhm.
we kind of as part of the program, we were talking about this. We were having this discussion of what it really means to truly live and
Mm.
embody a higher frequency, which is asked of us in these times, especially in the coming years. As you said yourself, Earth herself is going through this shift, and we, as part of nature, are also called to go through this shift with her. But of course, this is our own choice, and not everyone will take that leap of faith. And some people may well choose to stay in a lower vibration, and that's fine. It's to each their own. But
Mhm.
even just, it was interesting because as part of that program for a week, we're existing in this higher vibration and we're sort of insulated in our group and doing all these practices and feeling the energies and really connecting with nature and speaking to nature and tuning into her energies and utilizing them. And then we're sent off home where it's not necessarily quite the same vibration.
Right.
And
Yes.
coming back from that
Mhm.
2 years in a row now, it's very exhausting. It took me a good week or so just to integrate all the inner energetic shifts that were happening within. And interestingly, this is something we could talk about, but definitely when you are shifting to a higher vibration, what is no longer in resonance with that vibration is going to show up. So any past
Mhm.
wounds, emotional, on anything that's not been processed unresolved events. These are going to come up. So it's so important to then just stay curious, to do that shadow work, to be able to work through what's not been resolved and resolve it. Find your way, whether that is booking in a session with a therapist, a healer, or so many modalities out there. But it's really important to work because it's like we have, when we're going through that process of ascension, it's essentially this light that's shining in, that's showing us everything, that's illuminating everything, and whatever's been swept under the rug, right, is going to be, all that dirt and dust is going to be highlighted to clear. So that's that whole other side. It's not all like rainbows and unicorns, this ascension process. It can be very uncomfortable. I mean,
Mhm.
if I think back to, I guess, what we're going through now as a collective, this ascension process, it reminds me of when I went through quite a drastic healing phase in my life. It was basically a very intense healing year during my Saturn's
Mhm.
return after this traumatic situation in my life. I think that's also kind of a good example, if I look back at that, at what I went through, as a reminder of what can come up during this process. And maybe we can talk about
Mhm.
that and list kind of some of the things that you may experience that are uncomfortable throughout this journey.
That's a good point. For me, and of course, I can only talk about my own experience and those that come and see me and through conversations with like-minded friends, that this process for myself, I just started rereading my journals from like when I first started back in 22, like really diving into myself after
Yeah.
my rock bottom. And then I'm reading them and I'm like, oh my gosh. And I'll share this because I think it's important. This is why journaling I think is really
Yeah.
important and it's free, right? We talk about all these modalities that cost all this money, but there's also things you can do that are free that help you move
Yeah.
through this process and also gives you confidence because when you start to review back, like when I started reading my journals from the very beginning, I just felt myself have this huge confidence. Oh my gosh. Wow, I have made it this far. Like, look
Yeah.
how far I've come. I've come on my own. Look at all this stuff that came up that I've passed through, that I've cleared, that I've healed through. And then I also had a bunch of realizations. Like, I kept dreaming. This is why dreams are really important too. I kept dreaming that I'm having the love of my life come in, right? And I'm single, divorced for almost 5 years. And all these dreams were like, oh, and my true partner, my love of my life, my sacred one was coming in. And then I realized that's me. It was me. It was me and my self love because I was
Yeah.
not in self love. And I was dreaming of this sacred partner thinking it was outside myself, but it
Yeah.
was actually me.
Yeah.
And seeing the self love and how it would blossom to
Yeah.
me now.
That's a-
And so I think that's really
yeah.
fun and helpful as we journey through this ascension process and journey through this awakening and healing these very
Yeah.
deep wounds. These are some tools that I've recently found that were also really helpful of reviewing past whatever they are, journals,
Yeah.
recordings. That's why I started releasing some of my recording work and will continue to do so because all of that information is not old. It's still very resonant with a lot of people today that maybe have just started their journey or at
Yeah.
that moment. There's always divine timing for
Yeah.
everything we do.
Yeah, I love that. And journaling is so therapeutic, and it's so
Mhm.
great. Just, yeah, keep a record of what you're going through and how you're thinking and what you're feeling. And especially if you're navigating something challenging, so therapeutic to just get all that out down there. So it's less, yeah, amorphous and just structured. It's just, you're demystifying all the mess that's in your head and your heart. I love it. And I love that
Yeah.
symbol of this externalization of the sacred other. And it's like a representation of your own connection to your higher self. And I think that's an apt symbol for what we're going through as a collective, because that is what's happening. More and more people are developing this connection to their own higher guidance, their own higher self, their own soul.
Mhm.
And we're starting to finally stop outsourcing our truth to the news or the media or that teacher or that guru, and just
Mhm.
finding it within. And I think that's such an important part of this
Yeah.
process, is to really have that North Star be yourself, your own connection to yourself.
I think along this road too, I realized that discernment isn't just outward, it's also inward with
Yeah.
yourself, like having discernment within yourself. We were talking earlier too, like the more we heal ourselves and the more we come online, the more we have to have discernment within what
Yeah.
we're receiving. We were talking earlier about why I like the word gifts because the more we do for ourselves, the more we give ourselves these gifts, right? Either it's another aha moment, whether it's another ability coming online or a heightened ability or a download or whatever that looks like for each individual in their journey. It's just, do I believe? Do I
Yeah.
trust in that? Am I in a healthy space and am I hearing it multiple times? So me personally, Mariko, I sit with everything and I have to hear it at least 3 times in different ways or different sources for before I speak it to that person, if it's for a message for a person, or if it's a message I need to share collectively. And I think that's really important because a lot of people we were talking to, and I've been talking to other spiritual practitioners, even in ritual and ceremony or in the podcast, and we're talking a lot about spiritual bypassing. And because a lot of people are still doing that, they hear one thing and they think that's it and that's the story. And we're all sticking to it. And they're so
Yeah.
set in their belief. And that's where the personal
Yeah.
inward discernment really comes
Yeah,
in, right?
absolutely. Yeah, exactly. Discernment is so important. And I
Mm-hmm.
was thinking as
Yeah.
well, so some of the things that I think can come up during that process of this developing this heightened or deepening connection to oneself and one's truth, and with the discernment that's
Mm-hmm.
required as we go through this shift, it's also going to require discernment to see or sense, feel when you're no longer in alignment with someone else, or even old friendships sometimes. And even what's more difficult is family members. I think we really have to be aware that not everyone is going to be on the same journey as you. And it's meant to be that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the difficulties that's going to show up more and more over the next few years.
I would agree with you. I mean, throughout my process and my journey, that's happened on every level. Friends, relationship,
Yeah.
partnerships, and
Yeah.
business, in my career. And the thing too that I've been seeing happening is that the more I step
Yeah.
into my own truth and see from so many different angles now that I hadn't seen before. And because of that, the abilities start coming in of the things that I've always known and I'm just remembering. I can really see when someone's lying or someone's
Yeah.
stretching the truth or someone's not being in kind,
Yeah.
they're not moving from the
Yeah.
best piece of themselves. And then kind of like we call their bullshit,
Yeah.
but I don't, but I can see it, which in turn helps me to understand my next move, right? Like, oh, I need to step back. I'm not going to work with this person. I'm no longer friends with this person. I'm going to say thank
Yeah.
you for everything that we've shared. I
Completely.
must move
Yeah.
on.
This is it. Yeah. As we go through this process, that's it. Like we become much sharper at feeling any dissonance, right? Yeah, exactly. And yeah. And that is super uncomfortable at first when you start to notice that. It's been years that I've been kind of navigating that terrain, right? When it's not always, you
Mhm,
can't always avoid certain people or situations in which you're going to experience that dissonance. I think what's
mhm,
also important is to, I'm now getting like to the stage where, for the most part, I feel very grateful that I have friendships that are very supportive. But sometimes there might be an occasion or so where I feel that someone's not fully like, a friend is not fully, for whatever reason, happy for success or whatever. And I think in those
mhm,
situations, it's not necessarily either that you have to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but I think it's also
mhm.
okay to know you're still safe. You're safe within. And whatever's
Mhm.
happening is not necessarily a reflection of you. And it could be something that person's working through. And just to sort of limit your own expectations of what that relationship is. So maybe it's okay, not quite as
Yeah,
deep as it appears on the outside or as it had been 2 years ago. And that's okay. Things can
right.
kind of
What's
shift
what?
and change. And yeah, I certainly don't recommend having all friendships be that kind of unclear. Absolutely not. I think it's so important to find your tribe and to find people who you can be mutually supportive of. As we're going through this process, like all of us individually are having our sort of shadow wounds come up to the surface. So it's a process for everyone.
Collective, it's
Exactly,
planetary.
exactly. Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important what you said. We're going to notice these things. Yeah, these incongruences.
It's boundaries. Take a breath when you're in the same room as that person or same group. And if they feel like they're just draining your energy, if you're sitting there listening to them and you're like, "Ah, I feel like they're draining me," that's a big sign that you may no longer be in coherence with that person. And it's okay because we're souls having a human experience and we are here to grow. The Earth School is literally a growth, and we are constantly evolving. And if we're not evolving, then okay, we may still have the same friends for 20, 30, 40 years. That just shows, for me, that would show myself as
Yeah.
stagnant in a sense. How? I probably didn't think of that before now, but now I would see that as, oh, I'm not
But unless
growing,
we're all
right?
growing
And that's okay
with
because
you
maybe,
at the same pace in the same direction.
yeah. Like I see my first ex-husband, which I love and adore still, really good friend, but he's doing the same thing he's always been doing his whole life. And that's okay for him, but that's clearly why we're not together because I am not on that same, I did not choose that
Yes.
same trajectory. And that's okay. And I think that's the point that I would like to get across is that it's okay when we no longer resonate. That means it could be a positive as, oh my
Yes.
gosh, we're growing
Yeah.
to the next level. And
Yes. And
that is
also, we
great.
have to
Yeah.
practice letting go gracefully of what no longer is in alignment with us and knowing that as we let go, new will come in. It's just that way. One door closes, another opens. Yeah. I remember in my time in my life, yeah, around 10 years ago when I was really going through this intensive period of healing, I was changing friends every 2 years. So it was like really training me to let go. It can sometimes get lonely and disorienting, right? To have these cycles that you notice where, oh gosh, the friends that I have now are not friends that I've had for a long time, actually. I mean, I
Mhm.
certainly don't have any childhood friends. I mean, I also had we moved around a lot as kids, but I don't have any childhood friends. I mean, I think really my closest friends now are people I've got to know in the last 5 years, probably. Yeah, yeah, it's gonna happen.
And family members are similar, right? I've always been an outsider in my
Yeah.
family. I mean, and I've always wondered why. Now I clearly know why. But even just with my father, who I adore and love to the depths of my being, and recently more shadow work appeared of my father wound. And I kind of knew it was happening, but my whole time I've been focused on my mother's side, my maternal ancestors. I've been very loud and clear about why I'm clearing those. And I was like, what's my father fit into this? I know that. And boy, he came through loud and clear in a hypnotherapy session with psilocybin, actually. And now I understand very clear. And this is why shadow work is also beautiful. I want to talk about a little bit is that it can also be very beautiful in the sense to help you understand the whole point and process of why you have this certain relationship with a parent or a friend or a different relative
Yeah.
or whatever. And I'll just share a little bit about it without it getting too personal into the weeds. But basically, he hasn't been very present in my life,
Right.
except for when I really need him. But he's always been kind of distant, but
Sure.
loving, if that makes sense. But during my journey, I realized that my inner child was very sad about that. However, I saw him and myself on the other side
Sure.
of the veil, shoulder to shoulder,
Wow.
holding hands. And he told me that I requested that he be more supportive on the other side than here physically
Beautiful.
on this realm during this process of my awakening. So he is really helping me of my true nature on the other side of the veil. And people are understanding, I have 8 to 12 planets in my 12th house. So I am the other side of the veil. And then when I understood that, and then we both cried together because he saw what it was happening to me on this side. And I didn't know that impacted you so bad,
Yes.
but you asked me specifically before
Yeah.
coming here to be here. And then now I understood why he's always in the woods, because if he wasn't always in the woods, he needs that for his
Yeah.
grounding because most of his work is on the other side of the
Wow, I
veil
love
with
that.
me. And I thought, how
Yeah.
beautiful is that? And then it made me have such a different perspective of
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
relationship. And then my inner child was like, oh, okay, we'll just sit here
Yeah,
in loving kindness
beautiful.
then. Yeah. And so it was really beautiful. And I wanted to share that with everybody today and you because when you do start doing this shadow work, it's not always all this pain and all this trauma. It's also beautiful to help you understand the relationship that you have with a family member, a friend, moving through this life
Yeah,
with purpose. And that I think it just echoes that we really do set this up before we come
completely. I
here.
love that you shared that. And that exact thing is confirmed when I do my between life sessions with clients. I do between life and
Mhm.
spiritual regression. It's exactly the same. In fact, sometimes our biggest perpetrators are just another member of our soul group, maybe not our primary, but our more extended soul group. And we've high fived each other back there before incarnating. Don't be too hard
Yeah.
on me, but these are the roles we're playing for each other.
Yeah.
uh,
This is how I really want to
exactly.
catapult myself. Let's do it. Be
Yeah,
real mean to
exactly.
me.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
So I
and
can
that
learn.
requires so much love on the other side to know that
Mhm.
you're going to be someone that's causing someone on the 3D human realm pain for their own soul growth. I
Yeah.
mean, that's a very deep and profound relationship.
It's beautiful. I wanted to bring that up too because a lot of people are still very afraid of going into their shadow work. We've talked before, and I've talked on other previous podcasts that I really love technology. And The Architect came out, right, with Robert Edward Grant's work, and it's phenomenal. And so I joined these live meetings, and someone came through with a question about, oh, can I awaken with the architect? Meaning using it as a way to spiritual bypass without doing the work. And a lot of people are, no, it's just a tool, it's just a tool. And so I want to say it is just a tool, like all these modalities. It doesn't take away the personal person doing
Yeah,
their own work. Everything is a tool, but you are still a spiritual being with your own emotions that you have to feel through. It's about feeling. You can't feel all those emotions
yeah,
through
exactly. Yeah,
technology,
exactly.
right?
So if it's not uncomfortable, it's not really working. You're not going deep enough, is what I would say. It's supposed to be uncomfortable, that process. But it's beautiful when you get to the other side. So it's not uncomfortable forever.
Yeah.
It's a very, and there are so many beautiful modalities that just take you through that process in a lovely structured way. But the result is just a deeper connection to yourself on your path towards
Mhm.
sovereignty. It really is that. There's no other.
So we can circle back around to the higher self because when we start doing this, as you mentioned, it's coming back into connecting to our highest self, which then gets us to these higher energies and higher frequencies that we're talking about
Yeah.
and living in
Yeah.
those.
And I would say exactly like going back to the shadow work, you can't get that connection to your higher self unless you process the heaviness, the density, the dense emotions that are in your body, in your field. So it just comes
Mhm.
back to it really requires this curious, compassionate awareness for yourself to ask,
Mhm.
where does this come from? What is this about? What is this conflict teaching me? What is this discomfort in this relationship showing for me? And all those beautiful questions, the self inquiry is so important. And
Mhm.
you mentioned there how you were focused so much on your mother's side, but then your father showed up and you then had to sort of understand that better. And sometimes it is going to require the courage to, like you said before, boundaries, to have boundaries with certain people. And sometimes it's going to be more than boundaries. Maybe it's going to be a complete, yeah, dis cut off, yeah,
Cut
in
off.
that relationship. And then of course there are times where
Mm.
you might want that to happen, but it just cannot. In a family unit, there's still certain things you have to do together, responsibilities that need to be shared together. And that's something else too. So it's really
Mhm.
being flexible and understanding what's the best thing for you and everyone else involved, and what are you capable of, how are you capable of
Mhm.
navigating this complexity. Things are not always black and white, and
Mhm.
sometimes there are periods where things are complex and nebulous for a good few years, and that's also a valid place to be until something figures itself out. I have
So you have
people
that
close
aha
to my
moment.
life who have, yeah, I have people close to me who have had to really disconnect from certain family members. And that is not an easy process. It requires, there's
Mm-mm.
grieving involved in that. It requires a lot of courage as well to
Mm-hmm.
stay true in yourself and be in integrity, especially if you're dealing with very controlling or manipulative people and abuse potential. It's definitely not always easy. Yeah.
Yeah, it is not easy. And I've gone through that myself. And there were a few friends that I've had for a very long time that when I started seeing things differently and more clearly, I was like, oh, there was definitely a pattern from my childhood that I definitely came here to heal and fix and learn from. It was a pretty big one of narcissistic abuse and that personality type. And I figured out that the more I didn't face it, the more those people, those type of individual personalities kept coming towards
Exactly.
me. And then the more I didn't face it, the stronger that personality type
Yeah.
came to me. Are you listening? Are you
Exactly.
hello? And then when I realized that all those different people were just like that, but in a different
Yeah.
flavor, then it was a lot of
Yeah.
grieving, a lot of loneliness, a lot of sitting by
Yes.
myself, grieving that friendship I thought was one way, but now I
Yes.
see it as a completely
Yeah.
different way. Using that support and that circle because as we're all connected, it wasn't just the one friend that it kind of
Yeah.
spiraled out into multiples. And letting all of that go just to keep in my own peace was very challenging. And I know that we're not alone in that. And I know that everyone probably struggles with that at
Exactly.
some point in their own journey to self love and remembering of
Exactly.
who they are. And this is normal behavior of this process. And it's okay to feel into that. Again, it's the feelings that we're moving through
Yeah. And
to
I
let go.
think on this journey towards awakening, like any awakening requires a wake up call. It's like, what
I I think
right,
that's why
exactly.
they call
Right.
it that.
So
Yeah.
you noticing that unhealthy pattern keep repeating in your friendships, that's the uncomfortable wake up call. But then what's so
Mhm.
interesting, I think, and healthy is, yes, whilst it's a very lonely, it can be very lonely to have that reckoning, find yourself alone and grieving what you lost, and also having to go back into the past and rewrite what you thought you understood about the friendship. Actually, oh, it wasn't the way that I felt it at all. Looking back. Yeah,
Reevaluate
exactly.
it.
And there's a lot of sadness in that. But I think that sitting with
Mhm.
yourself through that period is such an important thing because that's how you develop that connection to your higher self is in stillness in moments where you're by yourself because we just
Yep.
live in a world full of distractions. Not many of us spend so much time alone and in stillness. And that's
Yeah.
where the wisdom can drop down, right? So that's how you build that relationship to yourself is by being with yourself without distractions.
That's a beautiful point because I think a lot of people, even through my process and my journey, I often think, "Oh my God, I'm so alone." And the whole point of our guide saying you're not alone is because when you do feel lonely moving through all this, you do sit in stillness and then you
Yeah.
understand you're not alone because you're getting the answers about how you feel, about what you just cleared, about the next steps the aha moments of why your boundaries
Yeah.
need to be up, the whole reason of I don't resonate with that anymore. Now, where do I want my
Exactly.
life to go? And so there's so much beauty in that
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. And I think another thing that comes up during this process, and maybe many people are going to start to experience this. I know I certainly did as well during my Saturn's return was this loss of identity. So detaching from
Yes.
the identity that you created for yourself. And yeah, Angela, you were sort of mentioning before
Mhm.
we recorded that you're going through that
I'm
now.
going through that.
Yeah. And this
Yeah.
is also not like a one and done deal, right? This can happen again cyclically. So again, it
Mhm.
involves flexibility and not attaching to an
Mhm.
idea of something, not attaching to our beliefs about something, but Yeah, maybe you could talk a little bit about this, what you're going through with this identity crisis.
Yes. Yeah. I do feel like it's a crisis, but one that I'm fully participating
Yeah,
in.
voluntary.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've had this same career for my entire life, basically. I mean,
Wow.
27 years. And over the past year, I've really been second guessing, why am I even doing this? Why am I, it doesn't fit anymore, right? It doesn't fit who I am. I can see right through every conference call. I can see right through every conference of all the people of why I'm there, which is nice to see that I can understand that and feel it and feel into it. But also knowing that through my remembering process, I'm remembering that I'm here, me personally, for a bigger picture, right? A bigger mission, bigger service. And I'm waking up to that. And now I'm like, do I jump now? But I think the last little bit before you jump and say, "Oh, screw it," is the piece of I'm a single mother right now of 4 children, and I support them fully and have my entire life with them. And jumping into the unknown, which is what we all struggle with, and whatever that unknown is and whatever we're jumping. But when you're at that last like threshold of yes, I know who I am, like I'm fully aware of who I really truly am here. But I'm still like, can I accept that and embody that fully into my this is what we talk about full
Yeah.
sovereignty, right? Can I just let that go and see that as it was a bridge to get me to where I'm at today? It was a bridge to learn my biggest lesson for my biggest soul growth. And now I'm done. I've sat in many ceremonies where I've seen myself
Yeah.
die. I've saw myself coming into an eagle and saying goodbye to my essence of my
Yeah.
old self and my old identity. I've switched my name back to my birth name that holds
Yeah.
higher resonance and of my true purpose. And that struggle of just saying, okay, I'm done. It's difficult. And so right now I'm going through a lot of clearing and another round of anger of myself. Like, why are you angry at myself? Can't I just
Yeah,
jump?
absolutely.
And I see many struggle with
Yeah,
that same pattern.
absolutely.
So,
And even I can just share a little anecdote, but even in my practice, I had a client once who was experiencing severe pain and he had an autoimmune condition which affects his spine. So he was very young, but he was like, his spine was crooked and he was on morphine every day. He walked in to my
mm,
therapy room with a cane and we're using EFT to really just process the pain. And I was kind of doing a lot of exploration of when this whole disease started in him and what was showing up in his life at that time, etc. And throughout the 90-minute session, we managed to reduce the pain from 9 out of 10 at the start of the session to 1 out of 10. And then there was that 1 out of 10
wow.
pain left. And I asked him, if there were a part of you that's still holding on to this pain, what would that part be? And why is it holding on to this pain? And he was like, I don't know who I am without it. So that was the final hook, right? So exactly, it's the
Identity.
identity. So sometimes we really are identified with things that are no longer supposed to keep us stuck. And sometimes that is pain. Sometimes that is fear. Sometimes that is a very limited version of ourselves. And it is
Yeah.
absolutely terrifying to, it's like the phrase jump and the net will be cast. It requires a lot
Yeah.
of trust and faith to jump. But also,
Yeah.
this very process that you're in now, like this, you're aware of both. Both are true. The fact that you know who
Mhm.
you actually are and what this fuller picture of your life can look like, and you're still through the motions of the
Mhm.
old. And that's also a valid period to be in. It's allowed to take the time that it takes, right?
Yeah. It's surreal. And so when we're talking about connected to our higher self, that is, and I think a lot of people don't understand the higher self versus the
Mhm.
oversoul. And because we're all shifting to that probability and reality over the next few years. And when you're always choosing the higher self, you're always like choosing the next best path. You're always choosing self care, self love. You're always choosing the shadow work. You're always choosing yourself above whatever. After some Mercury retrograde technical issues, we are back. And let's pray that it gets all the way through this episode. So when people say astrology is not a thing, I do not believe that.
Exactly.
We were talking about the higher self and where we do all this work and we get into deeper layers of ourself and our self-love and understanding and truly listening to ourself, listening to our inner voice, listening to our body of the yes, no, which way should we go? And listening to that, that really is the connecting to our higher self, because our higher self is just us guiding ourself like a little puppet in a sense to where we need to go, what choices we need to make to get to our higher evolution of ourself on this planet and our soul growth. Once we make that connection and we're truly living within our higher self, once we've gotten to self-love, we're no longer questioning everything and every idea we have or every path we should take or the fork of the road, then we know that we're living truly within our higher self. And that's when things start to
Yeah.
get really fun.
It's also when you find yourself no longer needing to ask everyone for their opinion, right?
Yes, I would agree with that 100%. We're not asking for validation of things anymore. We're no longer asking for seeking validation from outside
Yeah,
ourselves.
exactly. You just can feel with what's right, what for you, what's the truth, what's your truth.
Yeah. Where I see it and understand through my work and my experience is that not only is earth shifting and the frequency and everything vibration of that changing, but we are changing too. And the more that we evolve and ascend, then all of a sudden we're connecting to beyond our higher self, which when I started down this journey with remembering, no one really, I couldn't find anything about it. No one really talked about the oversoul and the role that that plays. There was like little talk about it in some work that I ran across during this process, but over the last few years, it's really come really heavy
Yeah.
to me that the next evolution of our growth is beyond the higher self and connecting truly to our oversoul.
Yeah.
And what the oversoul is beyond our higher self, meaning our soul of who we truly, truly are from a
Yeah.
soul level and who our soul collects from all our past
Yeah.
lives, either in earth or galactic, all of our wisdom, all of our gifts, everything that we've collected over our whole soul's lifetime is our oversoul who's directing us here over top of our higher self. And our oversoul can be more than just our one physical human being
Yeah.
vessel. Our oversoul can also be fractals of 10 to 20 to 2 different holographic
Yeah.
bodies walking in the same place or different places at the same
Yeah.
time. And that is truly our
Yeah.
oversoul.
Yeah. It's really interesting. And I think, it's not a coincidence that this knowledge is coming out now because, for example, when Michael Newton, who was, one of the early pioneers of regressing people to the between lives, to the spirit realms, to understand oversoul, when he was, his really mention extraterrestrial souls, or like we call them extraterrestrial resonant souls. And that was in the 90s. And now, in my training to do between lives regression, spiritual regression, already I regressed a few people quite early on who were regressed to a spaceship. So they weren't, a typical kind of human resonant soul would regress into the spirit realms. So that's somebody
Yeah.
who's maybe had many, 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 many human lives. But, these are people who were regressing into a spaceship and understanding that actually their oversoul is from a different planet. They're an extraterrestrial. And so yeah, all of this is coming out now, because I guess, yeah,
It's our
well, yeah, and
opportunity.
it with this kind of global ascension that's taking place, we are becoming more aware of who we truly are. And that's also our place in the cosmos and in the galactic. in our galactic community, right? And that's even in astrology
Deeper
that, there's going to be more and more of that coming to light, our true
of our
history, that
galactic
what it
community
truly means to be on Earth. Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, it is really.
my journey from 2012, I've been writing this book and I've come to understand that, first of all, writing books is not a day or night thing. It's quite the process, can take years, and that it's always evolving too. When I first started down this road of journey to remembering, I thought I knew exactly the whole storyline and how it was going to start and end. And it's actually changed so many
Wow.
times. But now I'm really understanding that the whole story and my full journey that I am to share is understanding how to return to our oversoul
Mm,
in its true embodiment. You must do the work, but first you work through to get to your higher self. And then when you get to your higher self, then you start to connect to your heart center and through your heart. So it's no longer the mind body, it's the body mind, it's
yeah.
the heart to the mind coherence, which is interesting because I read the Lee Harris and Regina's book of the new
Yes.
human, and it totally resonated because it is all about the
Yes.
heart forward. And which, if now we talk about the progression of the human species in our time here to the cosmos, it makes so much sense because what they're truly talking about is all of us connecting to our oversoul, because that is heart
Mm,
coherence. It's not like a human species is just all of a sudden coming into our planet through the birth of our children or any other forms of incarnation. It's actually us humans already
mm,
here moving into our oversoul to move from the heart forward. So we are evolving our own expansion, not necessarily just a whole new human species race, but we ourselves are evolving into that human species
mm,
race here through our oversoul
mhm,
embodiment.
mhm.
That is what is next. That is the next evolutionary phase of our human species. Once we're now, and a bunch of us are now starting to move from one within our highest self. And then there's so much more
Yeah.
potential beyond our
Yeah.
highest self, which goes to our
Yeah, and that's why I guess, past life regression is becoming more and more prevalent because, compare it to 20 years ago when so few people were doing that. And now, I mean it's still not mainstream, right? But like at least it's even in our it's in our language, it's in the vernacular that we can even say past lives, that we can even talk about these other
yeah,
aspects of ourselves.
without being
It,
woo woo.
well, we probably still
Yeah.
are to a lot of people out there.
But it's settling more in acceptable
Yes,
terms, right? And understanding the reason behind it and the power and the potency
exactly. Which is
behind it.
why, yeah, the power and the potency that comes from knowing who you really are, which is why you can understand why this was suppressed for so long. It was suppressed on purpose to
Yes.
stop people from understanding who they truly are, so they could, so that they didn't, so that they were limited, so that they didn't realize their true power and their true potential.
Yeah. This journey is quite long for me
Yeah.
because it's not only there's different levels of oversoul embodiment. There is the heart coherence level, but then when you move beyond that, there's also the physical level. And we all hear about walk-ins, and that's repeated over and over and over. And we were talking before we got started today about the repeated information, right? Everybody's repeating the same information. There's nothing new, but what's coming forward now and out now is about living truly from a different soul perspective of who you truly are. The walk-in looks different now, and it's not walk-ins aren't scary, but they are rare. They're becoming more aligned now, and you're hearing more about walk-ins. But the difference with the oversoul embodiment is an overlay. It's not a walk-in, it's a blueprint overlay of your original soul
Mm,
blueprint, of your oversoul soul blueprint. And what it does is it physically overlays the blueprint on top of your current
mhm,
blueprint. But what you have to do, as we all know, is you have to make space for that to come in. So you have to get rid of this density within your
yeah.
body of doing the
Yeah.
emotional work to clear, make room for this
Yeah.
overlay to sink into your body
Yeah.
energetically. That's what I've been moving through for the past since 2012. It's very
Yeah.
physical, but I think I've been experiencing this vast amount of feelings and this just so that I can explain it,
Yeah.
right? We're all on our own journey, we're all on our own experience. So what I'm experiencing may not be what anyone else experiences on such a level, but it is possible, and that's what we call the descent. When I talked
Mhm.
earlier about we're ascending so we can descend, we're actually ascending to the point to where our oversoul can then
Mm.
descend. But we have to get rid of all this
Mm.
density, and we have to get to this vibratory level and frequency so that it doesn't rip our bodies apart through our
Mhm.
nervous system
Mhm. Yeah.
to bring in our truest
Yeah.
self into form.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So how has that journey been for
Mhm.
you? At times a bit physically uncomfortable, I imagine.
Really physically uncomfortable. I think since 2012, I haven't breathed through my nose freely
Wow.
24/7 consistently since. And every time I was talking earlier, every time I have a modality with a shaman, with an energy worker, with hypnotherapy, and I always ask, like, what's up with my sinuses? And they just keep saying the same thing over and over. It's illumination. That's how I alchemize the energy. And that's how my body's integrating and clearing. It's just clearing through the third eye and the crown, right? And that's how it comes through. And that's how it's just clearing itself. So that's probably the part that is the most
Mm.
uncomfortable for me throughout the
Mm.
process. Yeah.
That's really interesting. Yeah. Just like past emotional wounds are going to resurface, it's also like, past injuries are going to resurface too, to be cleared, to be healed, to be detoxified.
Grief, I feel like for me has been the biggest one. I'm always releasing grief. Like always releasing grief. Even when I thought I didn't have any more grief left, there's more creeps up. Either it's collective grief or it's planetary grief or it's my ancestral grief at this point. But it's like always circulating.
Wow. Yeah.
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 But it's important to talk about this and bring this into the conversation in our communities because it really truly is the next evolutionary phase, and we're already seeing signs of that with these books that are coming out, and people creeping out like, oh, our higher self, more people coming along with their higher self. And well, you can't sit here and be open and going through this whole process and thinking, well, that's where the buck stops. The buck doesn't stop at fully integrating our higher self. It continues beyond space and time into other
Yeah.
forms.
That's super fascinating. Yeah. And I think so. What for you was the most important part of that process? Like, what really allowed you to get there to understanding, well, firstly, making that connection with your higher self, but then going beyond that?
That's how this podcast was developed, was all these different
I was going to
modalities.
say, season one
And
of your podcast is how you got.
yeah, yeah. Season one is really about everyone who's witnessed
Yeah.
me along this journey, which is also, good because it also confirms that it's not just me thinking these things. So I'm not spiritual bypassing
Mhm.
myself. And I've used these beautiful practitioners in my life to use my own
Yeah.
discernment. When you hear things once, it's best to reach out and for discernment and fact check yourself. So I use astrology. I probably had like over 20 hypnotherapy sessions. And mostly though, I do that with different practitioners in different ways so that it's the same thing coming through on all these sides. It's the same message relating back, are the same things coming through, channeling through me. There's my body feeling it the same on all
Mm.
levels, right? Am I being seen and heard from my body for this same process? Am I being seen and heard through my wounds for the same process through my ancestors, through those I channel? And because, some people are like, well, that hypnotherapy didn't work. I didn't feel like I dove deep enough, but then I challenged that throughout this process of having QHHT from two different QHHT practitioners, from having hypnotherapy, progression, regression with different practitioners. having tried twice now, completely different hypnotherapy on microdosing with psilocybin that takes me far beyond where I first thought I would be. And now I'm scheduled with you. I'm super excited about for this, in between life hypnotherapy later on in the next month. And I'm super excited to see what transpires from there, just taking it to the next
Yeah.
level. But, I think that that is really important when anyone's along this journey, if you're questioning, because it's one thing to step into your higher self and understand all these gifts you have and understand this is who I am. And then it's a whole other level to see yourself as you truly, truly your highest form is, and trying to allow that identity to be embodied in all of its form while you're letting go of this, right? It's challenging, and I think it's important to talk about because these are challenges that anyone will face in
Exactly.
different ways probably, but
Yeah.
these are tools that have been helping me move through this process.
Yeah. And I think this period of transition is going to be confusing because it's like, how do you then live your physical human 3D life, right? So how do you go so high and so into the cosmos and it's so broad and expansive? And then how do you continue, Angela?
I think this is why I had two other children 10 years after my first set, so that I'm having, these smaller children into my 50s. I'm 49 and they're keeping me grounded for sure. And I have to do a lot of grounding. So I tried the vegan diet for me and my soul. It doesn't work. I need grounding food. So I eat locally sourced organic chicken just to ground me. Beef doesn't sit well with me. Every time I eat beef now, I see what happened to
Yeah.
that cow, and I can't do that. But that works for me. It doesn't
Yeah.
work for everybody. And then I use Reiki a lot to get my energy back into my body, and a lot of alone time. So lately too, when I go to even outdoor festivals or a fair, or it's a really taxing on me because I'm actually taking in all this energy and I'm alchemizing it as I walk the earth. And so I have to come home. I end up taking like serious
Yeah.
naps and then just staying in my house outside the grocery store for like days at a time just to decompress. And so that's how I've been handling it and journaling a
Yeah.
lot. And then just drinking a lot of
Yes.
water helps
Yes.
helps significantly. It's quite the process, but it feels
Yeah.
good. But along the process, I remember even talking to my spiritual teachers and crying, like questioning everything. You still go through these like,
Mm.
am I crazy? Am I should literally be checking myself into the loony bin
Yeah.
here? Like do I have a brain tumor? Do I have like what's going I mean, is this really
Yeah.
real? And then but knowing that is really in itself beautiful because that just shows that you're outside of your ego and you really are trying to be in the best possible light that you can without letting ego distort you. And it's good to question, I think,
Absolutely.
too, that it's good for people to question the process every
Yeah.
now and then so they know that they're not working from ego.
Exactly.
I'm not a leader, I'm not a guru. I'm just going through this
Exactly.
process,
Yeah.
to be of service for the greater good and for myself. So those are the struggles that I've come into a lot is the questioning, I think, is the most one that resonates the highest with me of this process.
Yeah.
Because we're still human, right? We're still here as
Yeah.
human.
And actually, we're here as humans for a reason. It's like we're not, we're here to be in the 3D right now. Like we're here to have a physical experience, rather, is what I'm trying to say. If we wanted to just stay up in spirit, we could have. And we back.
Yeah, it is our
Yeah.
choice.
So, and just the lessons just do not land as hard in the world of spirit, in the energy field, in the energetic.
Yeah, this the emotional
Exactly.
body, right? That is the true
That is
blessing of soul
exactly, and
growth.
that's why Earth is such a strict but rich playground to learn in.
That's why I think a lot of spiritual practitioners say, I think Dolores can. I've never read any of her readings. I'm not drawn to reading any of
Mm.
her work, But I see little clips of her work, where she says, there's a line to get here, right? Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
and there's a reason for that. And we're living that. And so we should be very grateful. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, naps for me have been very important over the last few years. So I'm just
Yes.
racing, maybe not every day, but pretty often a nap, including today. So
Yeah. I take a nap like every
yeah,
day.
I think
So I think it's like being pregnant where you're always taking a nap, but I'm birthing something different.
exactly. So I
Yeah.
think it's okay to
Mhm.
normalize that slowing down and quiet moments and stillness with yourself. I think that's a really important part of this whole journey.
100%, and being kind to yourself. And I think that when you get to the point of your oversoul descending into your physical form, it is a process. It's not overnight, or else it literally would rip your body
Yeah,
apart. But knowing that and moving through it, you have to be patient with yourself. That is why you have to do all the work to get to your higher self, because you have to have that patience, that self-care. You have to truly dive into your self-care and your self-love and your
yeah,
self-awareness and feeling into your body, so that you see those signs of before you when you go through the higher self to your oversoul descent, that you really know how to listen to your body, you know when to stop, you know when to pause. And there was no way that I personally could have done that when I was not even in
yeah,
self-love at the beginning of this journey. So how would I know to stop and slow down for my
exactly.
nervous system, for my body to physically handle these frequencies that are coming in?
Exactly. It would lead to self-destruction.
Yeah, our body would
Yeah,
just break
yeah,
down.
yeah,
Yeah, we
yeah.
would die.
Yeah, no, it's
It's interesting. And I love sharing this work. Thank you for asking me these questions. I think it's important to educate people
yeah,
along this
because,
journey.
I wasn't aware of the oversoul part, really. And also, I wonder how you see what the world will look like once more and more people are embodying their oversoul. What does that look like for you?
It looks beautiful. We're all heart coherence. We're all in line with love. Just the so I think when I got channeled 2 years ago, before I even went down this path of knowing all of this, I had this channel, the love of one. It's in my journal actually, and I was like, oh, that's what we call ourselves. And now I understand truly the love of one. It's coming from the heart coherence of all of us when we get there through our oversoul, because our oversoul is our soul. It's connected to the love of one, of the source. And that's why my oversoul also embodies the 13th flame of the universal love, of the love of one. That is my mission here. And that's what I'm embodying. And that's what's coming through in its final descent in mid October for me. If you think about that, we're all going to be like the new human from the heart, always thinking from the heart, and how we can make a difference with love, always being number one. It's no longer a question. It's no longer someone shoving a belief system at us that's not it. Always your mind, your mind, your mind. And we're truly moving from love of all things, nature, animals, ourselves. How beautiful does that look for you?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, for me, how extraordinary. And it makes me feel hopeful for my
Yeah.
children and my grandchildren to come, and it makes me feel hopeful for the animals and nature and planet
Yeah.
Earth. I don't think that I could wish for anything beyond that. It seems quite extraordinary.
And yeah, I guess, a question on a lot of people's minds is what is the timeline for this, you know?
I am not I'm rare at this moment, but I am not the only one experiencing this in this world. It would be spiritual dogma if I said I'm the only one, But I do know my frequency that I'm embodying. The spiritual community has been saying the 2030 mark, somewhere around 2028, 27, 2030. That's when that's the point that you'll see
Mm,
more. When they say the aliens are coming, it's really to me, how I see it is our oversouls are
mm,
embodying. And that you can see, I mean, if you've spiritual bypassed or stopped at a certain point with this information coming in, sure, I can understand where you may see, because everyone sees something different, perceives something different. I can see how you perceive that aliens or ETs or our Cosmo friends are coming in. But to me, my perspective, it's us embodying ourselves at
mm,
that time
mm,
to lift the
mm.
frequency.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, that's a really interesting way of looking at it. So yeah, it really makes sense. Yeah. Well, yeah, super exciting times that we're living in now. Sharing, I think it's really useful to hear all of this.
There wasn't a lot of information about the oversoul because I think we were still grasping the higher
Yeah,
self,
true.
right?
And was that information that came through you during these different kinds of sessions that you've had? And
Yeah, through float meditations on myself and sensory floats. And, on Love of One in season one, where we're talking about all these different modalities, I've literally personally sat with everybody and done all these modalities more than
uh,
once or twice. There are things that I've done that I haven't talked about, like combo. The
yeah,
frog has been really helpful for me when I sat with it once. Float meditation tanks are something I did for a very long time that were very expansive for me, and I was able to see beyond space and time and gather information and chat with all these beings. And so there's a lot of other things that are woven in between all these modalities that are featured. But yeah, and just using again my own discernment of fact checking myself to make sure that this information that's coming in, I'm hearing it more than once or I'm seeing it more than once. I have the three rule for me. I need to at least experience it three times, either in a synchronicity, through a session where it comes in multiple times, the same information, or same visions, right? But then I sit with it to confirm with myself that that is real for me and my perception. And so, yeah, that's how everything's been coming in through me, through channeling, visions. Yeah, all these modalities, hypnotherapy has been really helpful. I love hypnotherapy. I'm a huge, huge fan, obviously, of all sorts. Not for everybody, but it is for
yeah,
me.
yeah, yes. No, same here. I love it too. I love that you just access these incredible realms of information and wisdom and experience.
Yes, in plant medicine, and I know that ayahuasca is not for everybody, but there's also San
Mhm.
Pedro, which I'll be interviewing someone about later this week for another episode about San Pedro and the beautiful, beautiful teacher he can be for people without the throwing up, without
Yeah.
the, excessive
Mhm.
purging. And then there's also, as we all know, psilocybin and different ways that you can journey with that in a safe way. And there's lots of different, even cacao, is a plant medicine. And she's just a beautiful heart opener and
Mhm.
expander that, it's not an illegal drug. There's so many different ways that you can interact with our nature and just sitting in nature and hugging a tree. Quite honestly, I know always got a bad off of hippies, but there's reality in
Yeah,
it.
completely. There's a beautiful thing a few years ago now called the Wilderness Vigil, but he went into the forest, and this is kind of not the process isn't supervised, but it's organized, and so there's an integration. There's like a contextual kind of framing of the experience. It's framed within the context of mythology, and it's a little bit like I guess you could call it a little bit like a walkabout kind of experience. Each individual goes into the woods and for 3 days in a fasted state and without any tent, just like a grounding mat and a tarp and, a sleeping bag. And, the whole process is for you to not distract yourself, not even to journal, not even to write, not even to do yoga, not even to trek or hike, but actually just stay there and commune with the forest and commune with nature. And on the final night, you just stand for 6 hours from darkness to the dawn. Yeah, standing there. And that's why it's called the vigil, because then you're doing a vigil. And within that fasted state, of course, it is a profound experience. And you will experience things, see things, hear things, all sorts. And people back in the day would do things like that. There was more of this communing with nature, with the wilderness, with silence, with yourself, and also fasting, right? Just that alone is can give you a completely psychedelic experience. So there's so
Absolutely.
much that we can do for free. Yeah,
Yes.
it's fascinating.
And nature is our biggest
Yeah.
friend. Yeah.
And I think we're living in times now where soon there will be, well, there already is a kind of an unveiling of these different realms that we coexist with, like the elemental kingdom, for example. And I think all of these things are going to become more visible to us through this process of ascension, on the earth.
Well, the fairies are just dying to be seen
Exactly.
again and be in
Yeah.
community. So that I do know.
It's very exciting times. I think it's really lovely to hear about, all of your channelings and everything that's come through you, because it helps us to stay optimistic for what's to come, especially now in times of destabilization and chaos, where things can look quite
Yeah.
rough and scary.
Mhm. Like the world's coming to
Yes.
an end, but it's not. It's just beginning. They say it has to get worse before it gets better, and that's kind of where we're at the
Yeah,
moment.
exactly. Yeah. And things have to break down
Mhm.
for new systems and ways of being to form.
Yeah, and just like we're moving through our shadow work, so with
Yeah,
Mother Earth,
exactly.
and there's always progress.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Thank you so much for today and all our technical problems and our Mercury retrograde shining brightly on us. But
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me, Angela. And as always, it's so lovely to also, you and your journey and all that's unfolding.
we'll see what happens during our time together, and maybe we'll share a little bit about
Yes.
that. Thank you, Mariko. And I will put all of her information on how to contact her with her beautiful modalities at the end of this session as well. Thank you for listening. If something moved in you, let it. The Oversoul doesn't arrive all at once. It's remembered through the body, through the heart, and through the quiet spaces in between. You can connect with Mariko and her beautiful work at mindsetting.co.uk. And if you feel ready to begin your own Oversoul journey, you can explore the Golden Heart and Golden Seed activations at loveofone.com. These sessions are not about giving, they are about remembering.